Welcome to New York Comic Con's Metaverse and to DC's In Conversation panel with Scott Snyder and James Tynion 4. I'm DC's executive editor, Marie Javins-1, and I'm very excited to introduce two creators that need no introduction, certainly not to each other or to me. James, Scott, come on out.
Hey, thanks so much for having us.
Yeah, it's great to see you virtually even.
So I know you guys talk to each other pretty much every day. And look, sometimes I talk to you every day too. But today we're going to share that with the video screen for the New York Comic Con audience. So thanks for coming in for this. For the next half hour, you two are going to give fans a chance to hear about the comics that you work on together, as well as some insight into the projects you're each doing on your own. I have a note here to remind you that the launch of American Vampire 1976 is this week. And the conclusion to the Joker War is also this week in Batman number 100. And also Dark Knight's Death Metal number 4 is on the shelves next week. So keep your spoilers to a minimum.
Man, we got a lot coming out.
Yeah, oh, that's
you guys
exciting.
have been working very hard. So if you're ready to go, I'm going to hand it over to you. Go ahead and have some fun.
Yeah.
If I can I say one quick thing, which is we owe Marie huge. Like, she made the joke about all of us talking every day, but we really do, and she's an incredible boss on all of this stuff. So she deserves all the credit in the world. So yes, thank you, Marie, for everything you do.
Yeah.
No, I do the metal.
You just talk about Marie for 30 minutes straight.
Yeah, no, let's do it. It's so exciting though. Like this has been such a long road. Like thinking back to when we first started discussing the first metal, like, and then even further back than that, the idea that now we're in this final stretch of death metal, and all of this cool stuff is happening, and I don't know, it's wild. It's really, really wild to be here and see all of this come together in a real way.
It really is. I mean, and if we're being totally upfront too, I mean, there's been so many changes that have happened over the last year, and it's been such a kind of shifting landscape all around in comics in general with COVID and the way that circumstances have kept all of us apart. And there's been so many factors that have been challenges, to make stuff that you're proud of and that you feel like you can really put out there that speak to, what you care about. And the fact that it's all now finally really coming to a head, both between the stuff that we're doing on death metal and we're getting to do on American Vampire, and the stuff that you're doing on Batman, that's so amazing. And some of the stuff you have coming up that you and I have been talking about for years. I mean, I think one of the weirdest, when you said, it's funny to look back and see how long it's been since we were talking about death metal. Death metal, I feel like we were talking about back in 2016, 2017, when we were talking about metal, into 2018, 2019. But yeah. I remember, not to take a trip down memory lane off script, but I remember talking to you about American Vampire when you were in college, and I was a teacher. I was like an adjunct teacher trying to break into comics and all of that, and talking to you about this series that I loved, and that would be everything that I wanted to write about, and not knowing how to sort of write a comic pitch and running it by you because you were a big comic fan. And so to come full circle in the way that now I feel like we're returning to so many properties and working on so many things that were part of our original dream when we were younger, by 10, 12, 13 years at this point, where, I was like, what if one day we get to write Batman? And, it's like, what if one day these creator-owned series have been going for 50 issues and we have, and to be here with you and to see you doing things on Batman that surpass what we were able to do, and to have you be where you are, and to be able to return to some of the stuff that, was my first stuff and the core stuff. It's a wonderful moment, as horrible a moment as it is, I think, in general, in terms of how many anxiety provoking things are happening, and the things that are keeping us from seeing you guys, you fans and all that, and making us do this digitally. There is a wonderful, at least creative kind of feeling, I think, among us in our group that we're making stuff we really love, together.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And it's really powerful. Like that's something that, I think about in terms of death metal all the time, that I think, and I think fans can sort of see it. It's like it's not always true that you lay down all of this track and you try to like set up this huge story, and you actually get to bring it to the close that you've been envisioning. And this is like such a passion project, and it's like you can feel it in the like inherent strangeness in both like metal and death metal. Like you can see this is our lunacy. Like this is everything in our brains, all of our love for DC Comics, like dialed up to 20. And then like you and Greg taking that and just like creating this powerhouse thing, and that just getting to play with it is so incredible.
It's fun, and I think the thing that I'd say about it is just that, you and I, the reason that we talk every day, and the reason I think we became such good friends or creative partners and then friends, because, you're like my best friend, you and Greg and Marie, we're really close too. But I mean, like I feel like family at this point, but the things that bound us, I think, early on were the desire to keep each other honest. My question to you when I was starting in comics were like, is this good enough? Does this say what I want it to say? And as a teacher, when I was doing the class, it was always about, is this, the story that you would like to pick up today and find? And now at this point, to be able to do these massive things like death metal and Batman, the priorities that you bring to Batman and the priorities that you're helping bring to death metal, that I'm bringing to death metal, that Marie's bringing to death metal, and Greg Capullo is certainly bringing to death metal, and John and FCO, everybody. We want people, I hope it's clear to people watching that it's a labor of love, that if we're going to talk death metal for a minute, I mean, it really is, it's a story that's been in the works a long time, and what it's meant to say to you is everything matters. That was always the post-it on a computer, the kind of slogan for it. And ultimately what it's saying is that the heroes all get together in this terrible moment where they keep losing, and they feel like the faith of the people of the world and all the different Earths is waning in them. And they have an opportunity essentially through Wonder Woman to take this crisis energy and rebuild the world in a way that would kind of erase their mistakes. And what you learn in issue 4, I know no spoilers, but I'm just spoiling because why not, right?
Yeah, go for it.
What you learn in issue 4, when they do revisit these crises and they see Superboy Prime and they see Darkseid and they see the Anti-Monitor, is that what villains do is try and kind of erase or make a history or make a certain moment more important than the last, and draw you in and say the things that you don't want to think about, or the stories that you don't want to address, or the things you've done you don't want to address. You don't have to. We'll start over. Don't worry. And what Wonder Woman really comes to realize, and Superman and Batman going through this battle and seeing these kind of horrible future crises where the villains have won and seeing what they might become, is that in the end of the day, they have to kind of reckon with the whole history of the DCU, that every story they've been through has happened. And the only way forward is to not only accept that, but have that as their arsenal to fight with. And what that means is that on the other side of that battle, when you say, I'm not going to take the power to sort of, erase my enemies, erase what I don't want you to look at, erase the things and start over in a brand new way that makes me comfortable. Instead, what I'm going to do is say, everything happened, everything's true. And what I need to do going forward is accept all of that, even if you wind up as a reader, as a person of Earth within the story, looking up to the heroes, reject me and find new heroes. And that to me is a love letter to all of DC Comics. What it says is all of these great stories that you've grown up with, whether you love them or hate them, they all matter. They're all real. They're all part of this one epic generational story. And at the end, what we do is we say all of it was material, all of it was consequential. And now whatever DC is going to be going forward, both narratively within the story and the characters, and as a company, because there have been a lot of changes as well. We're excited for that, and we welcome it with open arms, and we hope that it's going to be even better than what it was before. And you can only move forward with that kind of faith if you're a comic fan and you look up to superheroes. And so it is personal, as crazy as it is, with Greg drawing, Jarro, psychic starfish, being thrown by Jonah Hex at an alternate version of Batman who's secretly chemo, the, toxic, like, it's the height of lunacy. And yet at the core, both the original Metal and this one even more so, are deeply about the things that why we think comics matter and what they can show us about who we want to be going forward, as a community, as a comics community, but also as I think about my kids, what I want to teach my kids. So in that way, so I love it. I'm so grateful to you and to Marie and to everybody involved with it for making it real. And I see the same priorities. What I'd say is, when I look at your Batman, I'm so proud of you and so thrilled. So for people watching, I told James, I'm like, because we trade everything all the time and like talk story all the time. But I was like, I don't even want to know what's going to happen in Joker War. And I want to comment because I enjoy it so much, Punchline and Ghost Hunt, all these characters, Clown Hunter and Ghost, like, it's great. And so speak a little bit, like, let me ask you, what does it feel like to be on Batman? And also, adding I feel like you're so good right now at adding to the mythology, and you're doing it in such a way that feels exuberant and fun. What is it like to be on that flagship book and be making it yours so naturally? I know you've had a long runway because you did such an epic, Batman Eternal and Batman and Robin Eternal, and then Detective was like gold standard comics. But being on the flagship book is special, and what you're doing with it is special. So if you can speak to what it's like for those, we're in a select, rare company of people that get to write Batman. How does it feel? How are you doing?
Well, I'm doing well, and it's been a crazy road. It's been a really, really crazy road. Like, because my first ever published comic book was the backup in Batman #8 with you and Greg in the New 52. And that was the start of my whole career here. So getting to take on the driver's seat of the main Batman title, like, is a culmination in and of itself. Like, it's something that I've wanted for a long time, and it's something that, I thought at various points it might not even be a step that I get to, just because I have, I've done so much in Gotham. But getting a chance to sort of to take the wheels and show the Gotham that I think that there's a lot of potential to build right now it's incredibly exciting. Because this was one of those things where I remember right when I was first taking on the job, I knew that, I had heard that, Alfred was going to be dead heading into my run. And then we were doing interesting things with Jim Gordon. So Jim Gordon was no longer the police commissioner. And all of a sudden, like, all of these classic pieces of the Batman mythos are changed. And it's not that they're gone forever or anything, but it is interesting to write the character where it's like the core iconic, like, Batman history. And this is something I point to in issue 101, actually, one of the one directly after the big 100 out this week. But he remembers, how good it felt, the days in which he was Alfred was in his ear, back at the Batcave, and you had Jim Gordon would light up the bat signal and he'd land on the roof and he'd swing into action with a Robin at his side. And all of those core iconic elements of Batman, they're such a part of him. But now, but they're in his past. And now he needs to figure out, in this moment, how can he be Batman today? Knowing that the city is growing more and more dangerous. What the key thing with Joker War was basically to set off a whole bunch of change in Gotham City, and it's going to deeply affect the status quo to the point that Batman needs to change his approach. He's going to need to change his base of operations. He's going to need to change how he's interacting with crime in the city, and this is something that that is scary on one front, but it's also really exciting because Batman loves building things. That's why he has the big crazy Batcave with the giant T-Rex and all of that. He is a builder. He is a thinker. He likes figuring out how all these pieces come. So building out these kind of new characters, they're each meant to kind of challenge him and push him in new directions, where with a character like Punchline, we're starting to see, like, in the same way that he has his own legacy and his own second generation of characters, now his villains have their own legacies and their own second generation of characters. We're entering a new era of, like, crime in Gotham City that has evolved out of his own, like, peak era. And he needs to learn to fight it, because these are the children of the Gotham that he's been fighting for all this time. And then at the same time, you have something like Clown Hunter, who is, like, this is a kid who, like, is an indictment of Batman in some way, because he wasn't able to save this kid, and now this kid's taking it into his own hands. And it's just like, it's all about trying to kind of challenge him and challenge his perspective and do it in new ways and take advantage of the fact that we live in a world where there are so many, like, great Batman stories being told. Like, and this is the exciting thing about this moment of DC Comics, where you have books coming out through Black Label that can lean into the pure classic, iconic elements of the Batman mythos, and that it almost requires the main line to sort of take the next step forward and actually allow there to be consequences, story to story to story, that build on each other and allow the city to evolve to be something so exciting and different that this is an experience you can only get reading the main Batman book at DC Comics. Like, you can't get it in a video game, you can't get it in a movie or one of the Black Label books. You can only get it in this title. And so that's sort of the priority that I wanted to bring into it.
Well, and you've made it so your own. And just to speak for a second also to Jorge's art,
yes,
you know, Guillaume's art as well, but like Jorge and Tomeo, I mean, what the energy they bring to the book is so you. I love it because it feels vibrant and exuberant and young, and there's a feeling of kind of renewal to the book, you know, as their same was when Tom was doing it and it was his, you know, and there was Mikkel and it was and there was the feeling and David for a while, David Finch, like there was a certain kind of aesthetic to it. And what I love about it is you've made it your own. And one of the weird things I think in being in that odd club of people that get to write Batman is that there are few characters that are more iconic and have more pieces that are sort of part of a mythology that everyone knows. I mean, when you think about Spider-Man, you have Spider-Man, Mary Jane. Sorry, there's Marvel. What is Marvel Comics? Spider-Man, Mary Jane, Green Goblin. You know, they're characters. With Batman, I feel like there's almost more than any other comic book character in terms of his supporting cast, right? Yeah. The city itself. There's everything from Alfred and you know, his alter ego of Matches Malone to his whole incredible villains gallery and generation upon generation of other, you know, heroes and villains and so on. And what you realize when you take the book is all these pieces are there that you've always wanted to use. And I think the impulse is generally to kind of lean in and suddenly do that. But the same way when I took the book, Grant was, you know, in charge. And for a while, Dick Grayson was Batman. And then when Bruce was Batman again, there were still Batman Inc. And there were things that become scary at first, or are scary at first, because you think, man, I can't use the core pieces the way you were talking about speaking to Alfred, you know, or speaking to the idea of the city being changed in some way, or, you know, his relationship with Catwoman, all these things that are set up for you. And you're like, no, I want to do the classic thing. And then what you realize is that Batman's never really the classic thing when you take it and you make it yours. Like, the fun is something Grant said to me, and you know this story a million times, but you know, when I was really freaking out when I was on Batman early on and I saw Grant at San Diego Comic-Con in like 2012, I think it was, you know, so forever ago when I was doing Court of Owls, and he was like, you have to give your version a birth and a death, like give him an origin story and then give him an ending in your mind, even if you don't get to do those, so that he's defined end to end, and then understand that the story in between is yours to make. You know, all the pieces will be there. So the idea, even, I mean, the pieces of the core elements of his DNA, even if you change it wildly the way Grant did, you know, in that way, in the way that you're doing, and adding all of these great characters to the mythos, you know, working in, and I know I do, even though I asked not to know Joker War like beat by beat, I do know the status that James is talking about afterwards, and it's awesome. And what he has planned is really like brand new, and what I've never seen anyone do what he's going to do with Bruce. and the whole sort of Gotham landscape. So the fun is almost like you're given this thing that you've always thought, man, if I get to do that, I just want to do it classic because, you know, and then you never get to do it that way. It's all about if you don't take it and own it and take the pieces that are missing and then use them to make something completely new in your own, the way you are with the characters in it and the status quo and all the stuff you're building, and you don't add to it, then it's a waste. That's the challenge of Batman, you know, is like taking the most iconic superhero character in the world, I think, and then being asked, you know, well, you have these pieces, you don't have those. That's always the situation. What are you going to do? And if you kind of be like, well, I'm going to shrink away from the changes and just do something that's like, you know, Batman solves a crime, because you get fans that ask for this all the time. Where they're like, why don't you just do a simple Riddler story? Well, you know why you don't do a simpler, because yes, you do have room. Maybe you do that somewhere, but as a kind of ideological project on it, or a passion project, or an emotional project on the book, you have to take all of it and make it something that speaks to everything you're afraid of or that you're hopeful about. And that means changing and altering and adding and all of that stuff to the pieces. And that's the stuff that, as a reader, for me, I realized looking back, always excited me the most. Even when I was like, I want that Riddler story where it's just quiet. I say that to myself. And then I'm like, no, I wanted Dark Knight Returns. I wanted Year One. I wanted, you know, like you turned me on, like Bruce Wayne Fugitive, Bruce Wayne Murder. You want Nightfall. You want, Killing Joke and all of it. You want someone that says to you, I'm going to upset you by changing it. And then you read it and you're like, oh, wait, I thought I was going to be mad, but instead, actually, that's so fascinating, you know, to read something that's mine. It's my generation's Batman. And you're doing that right now and making this generation's Batman, you know, and I'm really excited for that in that way, you know.
Well, I appreciate it. And and to tap into one things you said, it's like, I think part of it is also tapping into the core essence of, you know, like it's working with Jorge Jimenez and Guillaume March primarily, and what I'm building in Gotham, and getting to lean into their strengths. And with Guillaume, I love writing horror stories for Guillaume, and that's something that goes back to when I worked with him on Talent. But then with Jorge, there's still a bit of a horror vibe, but just because I bring that to everything I write, but it's also tapping into our mutual love of manga and the sort of like that kind of energetic storytelling that we both grew up with and really wanted to inject Gotham City with. Like something that I've written in sort of my prologue to every single artist I've worked on a Gotham piece with in the last year is that, you know, Gotham City is not a real city. It is the idea of a city. And it is something that it's an idea of a city dialed up to 12. So it's just like, it's not something like grounded realism isn't what I'm trying to go for here. I'm trying to go for high octane, like horror action. And I'm trying to bring out all of these scary moments and bring out all of the exciting cast of characters. Like I did a 50-issue run on Detective Comics a few years ago, and I focused very much on the Bat family. And what I'm doing now is I'm focusing very much on the Bat villains and how to elevate them and what their roles in the city are and all of that stuff. And, you know, in places, even using them as a bit more of a supporting cast, like having Harley Quinn as a key part of the whole run. And she will continue to be a key part of my run moving forward. And it's just like all of that, it kind of gives the story its own vibrancy and I hope power. And I hope that, you know, people seem to be excited so far, but honest to God, what we're talking about for 2021, you know, and some of the designs are starting to come in from Jorge about what we wanted to build in the Batman story. Like that is like I am so excited.
It's so good.
I can't wait for people to see the world we're getting to build.
And I'll say really quick, Jorge, when I worked with him on Justice League, turned my whole family on to My Hero Academia and so much manga. I owe like Crunchyroll and Shonen Jump like so much money because he like all my kids are all we were My Hero Academia for Halloween like last year. because of it. So, Jorge,
That's amazing.
Jorge, we love you, handsomest man in comics. But I think one of the things that's exciting too, as we get towards the end of this, he is actually the handsomest man in all of comics. And when you see him, it's just like you're like, oh man, like it's just you're like, you know, you think you're doing okay, you know what I mean? Where you're like, I feel good about myself today, and then you see Jorge Jimenez like doing a handstand in the thing, and you're like, it's just there's no
competition.
So he is Batman or Bruce Wayne or, you know, Clark Kent, but like done up in an even better way. So but the thing I think we're talking about too is that you're bringing the priorities of creator-owned books. Both of us have been really invested, I think, as we're getting to the end of this, like in creator-owned as well as superhero all the time. And you know, you've been great about keeping me honest about always making sure I have a space that's mine to play with. Because one of the intimidating things about Batman and all these characters is that there are people that know the mythology better than you, and there are constraints, and there's continuity. And then when you're asking people to believe in you to do something through these characters that you believe in. But when you do creator owned, it's the inverted process where they kind of know you, but the world you're building together is wholly yours. And so just speaking for a second, I can't talk on the panel about the things you have lined up creator owned wise because I'm not supposed to, but to see you have the year you've had with the stuff you've done outside DC too, like from Wind to Department of Truth to Something's Killing Children, to all of it has been such a huge inspiration. You're like my favorite writer out there. And bringing back American Vampire now, to me, you were the person that really pushed me to go back to it. And the idea of going back to the series that is secretly kind of my home base, like my favorite thing that I get to write, that has everything I love to write about in it, and doing it now on the 10th anniversary and saying I've been at DC 10 years, I want to go back and be able to return to the things that I started with this, and then some creator owned outside of it, and then the stuff that we have planned after Death Metal, which I can't speak about, but James and Marie know about in general, is such a good feeling. So if I could get really quick, like American Vampire, I would, Rafa and everybody would kill me if I don't speak to it for a second. But we're coming back. James is an integral part of this in the way that he has heard every page of every story. But this one is my favorite. It's 1976. There's so many parallels between the 70s and this moment, I think, in American history. The series has always been about seeing American history through the lens of monsters that are heroic or horrible. And 76, it's the bicentennial, and Skinner Sweet is human. He has all the monster taken out of him, and he's a stunt man on the borderlands of the Southwest. And it's this big epic story that brings everything back. It's 10 issues long. It's got, you know, everyone from Travis to the guy who's like the rockabilly vampire killer that's like biting back to Dracula in it. And again, I've been nervous about going back to it, but the reason I also really harp on it now at the end is because James is somebody who, as you know, such a good friend and family, has kept me grounded over the years on books like Batman. And, you know, I've tried to do the same for him, but he's always grounded anyway. But it's more like, you know, the idea of going back to the things that matter most to you. And I think watching him being able to do what he's doing, both in the creator-owned world, watching you, I'm talking to you now directly instead of fans, like being able to watch you do what you're doing so well on your books and making so many great things that are yours in such a prismatic way, and then take Batman and apply those same priorities to it, makes me excited to go back to books like American Vampire and be like, yeah, this is why we got into it. You know, these are the things that made us friends at the beginning. And
well, literally,
so close
like this is, like literally, this is how we started talking for at the very, very beginning. I remember, you know, like at Sarah Lawrence College, I interviewed you because one of this is like part of how Sarah Lawrence works is the students interview the teachers to figure out which classes you want to take. So I went. And I went in to do my interview with Scott, who I knew had written some like superhero themed short stories. And you like mentioned during the interview that you were starting to have conversations with Vertigo and also a little bit with Marvel as well. And you were like excited to show me a pitch that you'd been working on. And once I actually got into the class, it was our first meeting together, and you sent me the pitch document for American Vampire, and you and you were just like, what do you think about it? And I think I
remember.
Yeah, I sent you back like a 20-page email with all of my thoughts, breaking down like how I would do this, how I would do that. And then you've sent me literally everything you've written ever since.
And you got an 8+. That's what I wanted to know. You got an 8+, and you always will. So that's it. But we look, if we can just, I know we're out of time, or we're running out of time. Thank you, James and Marie, for making the time as well. It's been a blast. Like, in this crazy world right now, to get to talk to you guys, seeing your faces is terrific. And to everybody out there watching as well, we really appreciate it. You know, thank you for picking up the books. We really are having a blast and loving what we're doing with it. And also a quick thank you to the people that set all of this up as well. Jennifer and Clark and Chris and Fletch, all the people that you guys don't see behind the scenes that make this stuff possible. It's a great thing.
And a special shout out to Josh Williamson, who's helped us build this whole, like, when we talk about the stories about building death metal over the last few years, like, he has been crucial in building the entire metal super story. And he just wrapped a legendary 100 issue flash run that, you know, I could not be prouder of him as a friend. And yeah, we've got really exciting stuff planned for you guys over the next year.
You're totally right. He is the third leg of the stool with this stuff, and a brother in arms. So yes, absolutely.
Can I just come in here and say for a second that New York Comic Con and Graffiti Designs have some foil variants on sale through the Graffiti Designs website, graffitidesigns.com. And I think that you both personally glued the foil on every one of these covers, right?
It
For
took
American
a long
Vampire, American Vampire 1976 #1, Batman #100, Death Metal Multiverses End #1, and Joker Warzone, Batman Joker Warzone #1. And that was a lot of pasting. I hope people like to buy them.
Yes.
I printed them on this printer here in my office, and I just folded them.
Yes, exactly. There's
there's like Diet Coke stains on them. It's great.
Thanks so much, guys, for joining us. And thank you, everyone, for watching. It's been great. Bye.